All three.
Good morning, fellas.
Hey,
Good morning.
let me get
I'm
the
talking
volume here.
with John Lowe and Tom Probasco on a day like any other day, except we're closing in on the nomination for president from the Democrats. I guess we got Kamala as leading the pack there.
Seems
Sounds
like
right so far.
it. Seems like it.
Apparently so.
Anyhow, we talk about politics, religion. Uh, we haven't discussed sex much, and probably won't. But, it's not that much of an interest when you get past 60. So, for all you young people, we encourage you to go someplace where they're talking about it and thinking about it. It's good for you. Get your system riled up, get your blood moving. Hopefully, you won't get in too much trouble. What can I say?
Well, it's a political issue, though, regardless of our age.
That's right. It sure is, isn't it, John?
That's why we call this KaPOOF. So we can cover sex, religion, and politics.
And the kitchen. Don't forget the kitchen. So there's the bedroom and there's the kitchen.
Kitchen issues.
That's right. Survival.
Yeah.
I know my role in the kitchen. It is to wash the dishes, and that's my pride. That's my leading thing. That's how I. That's
What does that follow, though, Frank? Dishes. What follows? What does that follow?
What does dishes follow?
Yeah.
Dinner?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Eating.
Yeah. Well,
We like that meal, don't we? Huh? No matter what age we are. And if we don't have it, then no dishes either.
true.
So there's the bedroom and there's the kitchen.
Yeah.
Morality, sexual morality, and then there's survival and justice. And we have two extremes politically, economically, capitalism, you've got socialism, all that's mixed in there.
Well, I think in capitalism, if you get the money, you can buy the honey. So,
But if you don't have that, then the other people, they're exploited.
well, and I think some of that has to do with social class. It's not a complete equivalency.
What is it then?
Well, Democrats have the Democratic side. The liberals have their elites. They have their moneyed class, and 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 I I don't see that liberalism in the United States is as much of an equivalency with the working class as labor is in Britain, for instance. And then there's the I think it was the Swedish uh, soccer team. I think it was that took a cut in pay so that the women's soccer team could be paid more justly. And I thought, by golly, I suddenly am resonating with the Swedes. I think it was the Swedes. It might have been Finland.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Yeah, it
Some
was,
liberal group though.
it was in the Scandinavian
Right.
countries. I bet I can Google it. Google is a really fascinating thing for me. Sports team takes cut in pay, so women's team. U.S. soccer equal pay, and no, let's see here. Here we go. Old guy struggles with technology. Oh, it's all about the U.S. Soccer team on Google.
What about the that tall girl that plays such great basketball? Who, as far as what would we say, um, economically, are outdoing the males?
Somehow.
That's a change.
Right, but it's happened. The women's basketball is outdoing a lot of the men
Here's that article.
financially, because she's such a hot star, and others that are coming along. There, those tall gals.
There, yeah. Swedish men's team forgoes pay to support female footballers. And Sweden's male national team has pledged to play the remainder of their matches this year without pay. The Swedish Football Association announced the move following harsh criticism over inequality. You know, this is really, really, I think it's a way of kind of measuring change in the world. I know my mother played baseball in the South, and I don't know what teams she played on. She had a twin sister, and they played first base and pitched, and she was very, very competitive person, and I think somewhere she is cheering the rising of the female sports. I see it as kind of evolutionary experiments. Traditionally, I think that men and women have had gender roles that had to do with both childbearing and community organizing. It made for a more peaceful community. If women had a group that met to sew together, there was less likelihood of hanky-panky from a visiting gentleman or people distracting from the job at hand. And some beautiful things came out of that. As a child, I remember women gathering at my grandmother's house to quilt. There was a quilting frame, and they had these patches, and they would sew and visit, and that was a very beautiful thing. You know,
Well, they were the homemakers too, and they had their place. But what changed that somewhat historically in the last century?
I think one of the things that I think capitalism has had a major effect on that. Industrialization preceded preceded that, where women could be put to work in factories, and there were some things that they did as a part of a community at home. Have you ever seen pictures of these women working with wool, and they've got it and it's wet on a table, and they'll pound it 3 times, and they're singing this song da 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 like that, and they're passing it around in this big circle, just beautiful. They got this little song that they sing, and they took
Well,
that time.
at the turn of the century, they did a lot of that sort of thing, and the women were paid very low and were seamstresses, and they were really abused. So I don't think that was from capitalism, because they were going to put them in their place and use them as they did children, 1900s in that era. Well, what I think we're really missing is the feminism that came along, which was a liberal movement, not the capitalist.
Well, and
Feminism.
we were an agrarian society until rather recently. At the turn of the last century, a little bit before, 90% of the population were farmers. That changed very quickly with industrialism, but that situation, that shift, regardless of politics, and politics obviously gets involved, but when you move from the majority of the population being involved in farming, to this rapid industrialization, and that's what both of you are talking about, I think, to some degree.
I see historically different societies have managed the balance between the genders in different ways, but there came a time in our particular society when that became abusive. I wonder how far back that goes, and
Where would you see this balance in other societies? You don't find it in the Muslim society. Do you find it in the Chinese?
you might be, I think
Or the Hindu?
I think we might be surprised at the ways that the balance
Certainly, as you read Tom Holland, as far as before Christianity, women were on a low level, very low level. Babies were discarded easily. Where is all this balance other than, really, in a sense, Christian society?
I think there's some narrowness in his view there. And
well, give me an example.
Well, I think for one obvious example is Judaism.
But that's within our society, the Judeo-Christian, yes.
But it's Judeo and not Christian. And if you're saying that,
well, they go together.
Well, one follows the other.
But we also will say that Judaism was tribalism.
It was.
And then Christianity transcends the tribal. So there's not man or woman or Greek or Jew, we're all one human race. This is the flourishing of Christianity. On top of, but the one God, and yes, equality, that we're all created in God's image, that came from Judaism with all the laws and so forth. But it was through Christianity that the dignity of every human being and all human beings, not tribalism. Tribalism, yes, continued on through Judaism.
I'm once again, I respectfully have reservations about that.
What examples? Yeah, you can reservations, yes. And there may be little incidences here, there are incidences there, but I mean, in a real basic sense, where does it come? Where would you find it? We generalize sometimes. Well, yes, this is where is the evidence?
Okay, in Cherokee society, for instance, women had a prominent place in managing the society, and
Managing it?
pardon?
Managing it?
Yes, they pretty well ran things.
I'd
And
like to see the evidence, but you go ahead. You can
well,
find it.
yeah, okay. It was a matriarchal society. And a man would go to live with his wife's family. Women held power. And in Judaism, and historically, I forget the name. When the servant was sent in search of a bride and came to a well, and it was Rebecca that came out, and he said, asked for if she would give him water, and she said she would, and water for his camels too. Remember that?
Yeah.
Okay. When he, told them that he had been looking for her and asked her to return with him to his master as a bride, the response from the family, well, let's ask the girl. She resided at her mother's house.
Mm-hmm.
There was the thread in Judaism of powerful women. She was residing in her mother's house. And in African culture, for instance, you might have a man might have multiple wives, or you could also say the multiple wives have a man. The wives,
Polygamy. But
yeah,
who had the care? But yes, you can nitpick here and there and yonder, and you'll find some exceptions. But I'm saying, as a civilization, you don't find it. I think, and also you find a great deal of tribalism in Christianity too. Oh yes, and World War I was an example of the worst kind. God
but
is on our side. God is on our side. God is on our side. All those millions of people killed.
I think that there's a thing in life that we must look to balance. And when balance it's like physics. If a wheel gets out of balance, you got a problem. It will wear poorly and it will break. And the society will do so as well. And the balance can be done in a number of different ways, but balance always is balance. You equalize forces. And there's good reasons. Sometimes what starts out as being in balance gets changed over time because of circumstances.
What would you say this unbalance is? What could you name that? In other words, we could call hubris or call it sin.
Well,
It's unbalance, unbalance. And this is why we need in our society is a checks of and balances. It's the very things we're facing today. Yes, you need checks and balances, especially if you're going to put the power among the people, which is a new thing, power of the people. Always before it's from top down. Now, if we go the root of the people, John Locke's theory behind democracy, then what keeps the people from becoming just populace as well as the mobs, going in all directions? Now, Plato said, well, you need the intelligence, the philosophers, because otherwise the mobs are not going to do anything. They'll just go in all directions.
let's go to Tom Probasco. Tom,
Okay, yeah, Tom.
Well, I'm hearing this and I'm thinking there when you were talking about cohesion, or that's not the word you use, but I think of the term entropy, the tendency of things to fall apart. Now, it is a it's a term from science, but it has been applied to societies as well. Entropy, and it reminds me of, and I've mentioned this before, of the Yeats poem. Things fall apart, the center cannot hold. But changing circumstances over time, technology, things are constantly changing. And so what role, so we look to the past because that's what we know. Well, to some extent, those who, and even that, the ability to know what has transpired, knowledge, education, it gets very difficult, I think, to analyze these things, but that's what we do. And that's what we're doing right here. We're trying to understand. And we come to different conclusions, reasonable people. But this idea of entropy is kind of fascinating to me. You can look at the past and say, well, that was a better time. And when you were talking about people being, women being in a lower, taken advantage of, the poor, what did that look like to everybody at the time? You're born into a society and your expectations of what can be achieved are immediately starting to form. So how did people look at it? What are the mechanisms of change? Of what does it mean for things to get better? And how does that transpire? The more I learn about these things, the more I realize I know virtually nothing. That's the way I often feel about
I have found that when you look closely at history that you thought that you knew, the closer you look, the more you find that you didn't really know.
And that's the very thing I'm pointing to is history. And there are some things I am certain of.
What are you certain of, John?
Love, agape love. As I've said before, I know nothing in a sense in comparison to physics and the atomic levels and quantum physics and all that. The more they delve into that, the more I'm mystified by it. But I do know I love my children and they love me. And if I don't, then I should. I know I should. And I know I falter, but I know that's the route I should go to follow, to seek their good, and really everyone. And I don't shrink from that. And how did I come to know about it? Is through revelation. As we said before, how do I know you or you know me? Except through some revelation of you and to me back and forth. I can get all kinds of information about you, and that's unlimited because we can always add more and more and more. But when you do reveal something of your depth of soul and one to the other, then that's a qualitative something you say yes to or no to. And that's something you grow in, yes. But that is, to me, the certainty of what is virtue, what is good. And it's revealed to me through Jesus Christ, who is the God-man, revealing God to me, who loves me no matter what I do. And that I feel certain of.
Well,
And you can say, well, I don't know. You can say there's entropy, you can call it all that you want to. There are certain things you qualitatively you can be certain of. Not as far as physics and the material world, no.
But what is, your certainty?
In other words, there's a hierarchy of values that you have to commit yourself to. The value, not academic learning about. Truth is about this or truth is about that, but truth as far as value is concerned, and that is the hierarchy. Otherwise, you don't know anything. You're left, what is left is power. You take that out and there's just power. And that's the problem we're in today, fascism or communism, the extremes. You take God out of the picture and that's the power struggle. And you have religion there, yes, because they're lined up too. Religion, yes, lined up with what? Power.
Well, you mentioned the certainty, talking about Christ or Jesus. I'm not sure how they're different or if they are. There are those.
They're the revelation. It's the revelation of God.
And is
the creator otherwise is always other to me. I can be awed by what he's created. I can see that I am limited. Therefore, I must ask questions. I'm finite. I have to ask questions. And in asking questions, where do my questions go? Well, if I'm finite, it goes to the infinite. But mathematics, whether it's in the material world or the spiritual world, you start with uncertainty. And the opposite of that, or the fulfillment of that, is the infinite. That's something that's inborn in us.
So I may miss something here, John, but you mentioned, if we're talking about certainty, and there are those.
Value certainty. Value. Not intellectual. Value. There's a difference.
Well, what does this?
We're judged on value, not just intellectual knowledge about intellect. We have to grow in that area too, because that's part of our nature. But it's the value of the heart, the depths of your being.
Hold yourself back just a minute, John, and let Tom ask.
Go ahead. I'm listening.
No, I was just backing up a little bit. with regard to certainty, perhaps, there are those that whom I know say they have a personal relationship with Jesus. And they are certain of the love of Christ. But then there are those who say that means nothing to them. And what is the difference? What is, if something's missing from those who just say, I don't have any religion whatever, Jesus or any other religious figure means nothing to me. Now, I'm not talking about people who are immoral. These are people that are they're highly moral individuals. But what is the difference? If love of Christ is a certainty, how are those that say they don't experience it and have no connection to it? What's the difference? Or maybe I'm asking the wrong question.
Well, they may detest it from the kind of people that they have run onto as they claim to be Christian. They may have a father that's abusive and or have some very unfortunate experience with Christians. That could be any number of ways they could be distorting the idea that somehow they have not received the revelation in its true form. It's not their fault, no doubt.
I think that part of this discussion must rest in semiotics, or the meaning of words, the meaning of meaning, and language. Language is like when you talk about Christ, you're pointing at something in a way. When you use words are like signposts, and you say,
You're very right. I think I agree with you very much.
somebody
Yeah.
might actually know Christ. If you take the Paul's definition of love, if you've known someone who is patient, known someone who is kind, known someone who is forgiving, but if you know love, according to Paul's definition of love, you know God.
True.
So if we insist on using the word Christ in a way that is exclusive, aren't we being the opposite of loving? We're saying, well, you didn't use the right word, so we're going to let you go to hell.
Well, you can use language again in a very abusive way as well. There are the postmodernists who would say you can't really come up with any kind of meaning of anything because of words. Language, you can't use language at all.
And that's where
there's no truth. In other words, there's no truth. It's whatever you make it.
I think that's where centering prayer comes in, and meditation, because they go directly from my heart to the heart of other. And I'm fascinated by the story of the Tower of Babel. And when I look at that, are you familiar with that, Tom?
Yeah.
Yeah. When I look at that, and I realize just how profound it is to look at differences in language and meaning, and some here,
what I'm saying is the opposite of the Tower of Babel. It's not something we create. Religion attempts to find God, but in Christianity is God coming to man. God's revelation.
I think that creation is constantly unfolding and is constantly coming to us and at us. Excuse me, I have to go ahead, fellas, and
It was there before the revelation, and it will continue afterward, because that's the fuller picture of the intellect in pulling together all of the intellect is part of the relationship that you have with someone. It goes back to relationship again.
So where
It's not just intellect, but relationship.
so what is so relationships are the connective tissue to our essential beings?
It's everything. Relationship. It's value based. It's not my intellect. My intellect's part of my being, and I try to pull it all together and make sense of it. It's like a roadmap. C.S. Lewis points out theology is like a roadmap, but being there is one's abstract, the other's being there in its existential, but in its basic sense of your very depth being. Yeah, as you put it, the depth of your being, exactly. One's of the intellect to the heartfelt. Let's put it that way. But it's just not just feeling. It's something depths of your very depths of soul, and that's mystery.
Okay, yeah. So you're back to that.
It's what
Yeah.
you are. It's what you are, Tom. It's your very inner being. You are a soul. Tom. It's Tom. That's the word, yes. But your inner being, that's your soul. That's Tom. I can say all kinds of things about you, and you know what I'm talking about. I think you do.
Yeah, when you
Your
say
very inner being. What is that? That's your soul. It's the I. When you look in the mirror, do you ever see the seer? It's a mystery there. You
Yeah.
see your face, you see your expressions, but it's the I. That's your depth of being. It's your very, you can't go any deeper.
and how does your soul and mine and Frank's and everybody else's relate?
Revelation. You open up one to the other on a depth level. There's a difference, you know. We could talk on. There's a lot of small talk, isn't there?
Yeah.
There's a lot of small talk. When does it become something of soul talk? Soul grasping, sharing, relationship. That's what I'm driving at. And we're saying this is what God does. God relates to us. He gives himself on the cross, bleeds to death, goes to the depth of the human being, human relations, the human condition to show his love, to express his love. And if that doesn't do it to you, then you end up with all kinds of entropy.
Yeah, and so I've often, Frank and I have talked about this. I may have brought it up, John, since you joined us, but in the Lord's Prayer, at the very center of it, before you get to kind of what I think of as the